Hi, and welcome to our fifth module for the IELTS listening prep. In today's module, we will be focusing on identifying main ideas. Let's get started. Your big question is, what does this look like on the IELTS? Here's an example. Let's take a look. On the IELTS, they might ask you something like, which opinion does each person express about Box Telecom, for example? We have the names of three people. What they're really asking you to figure out is, what is this person's idea? What's the why for why they are talking? Okay. You have different choices here, and you're going to have to determine which one belongs to each person. You can see this isn't a question that asks directly, what is the main idea? Okay, so sometimes on the IELTS, it's sneaky, all right? It's tricky. They won't ask you exactly what is the main idea, but questions of like this are asking you, what's the big picture? So how can you get good at this? How can you improve in this skill? I'm going to tell you two ways today. And the first one is, listen carefully for the overview in the very beginning. What the overview is kind of like a roadmap. It says where they're going. This is especially true if you're listening to a lecture. Okay. Now let's take a look at the beginning of what might be a lecture. The lecturer might say something like this. Good morning, everybody. Today I want to talk about negotiation. First, I'd like to talk about why negotiation is so important for business. And then we'll talk about different approaches to negotiation. After that, we'll talk about some techniques for negotiating successfully. So, why are negotiation skills important? Every time, blah, 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 you have the most important information to determine the main ideas already. Let's take a look. First of all, from the lecture here and from the words that you can see, what's the topic? If you said negotiation, you're absolutely right. That's the topic of the lecture. Now, what are the main ideas? Well, here's a good sign that we're going to find one. First, I'd like to talk about why negotiation is so important for business. That's the first main idea that will be covered in the lecture. And then, again, big picture overview, we'll talk about different approaches to negotiation. That's going to be the second main idea in this lecture. After that, there's one more. Let's look for number 3. We'll talk about some techniques for negotiating successfully. All right, so as you listen to the information in the lecture, you're going to be hearing those 3 main ideas. All right, that was my first tip. Now my second tip is to figure out the why. Why is the person talking? I give you 5 ideas, 5 general reasons why people are communicating. One of them is to inform. Okay, who informs? Often teachers, lecturers, professors are people who are giving information. That's their purpose for talking. Another reason people talk is to influence others. Now, who does this? Well, it's your politicians, your car salesmen, for example. The third one is regulate. Another way to say that is making rules, making guidelines. Who does that? Well, people who are in charge of making laws do that. Teachers do that when they set up the classroom. Request. Another big reason that people talk is to request, to make a request for information, to make a request for something that they need, maybe some money, maybe extra time to do something. The fifth reason that people might communicate is to entertain, to make someone smile, to make someone laugh. When you're listening, whether it's one person talking or it's a group of people talking, an important thing to identify the main idea is to figure out the why. Are they talking to inform? Are they talking to influence? Okay? You might be able to remember these 5 things easily if you remember the first letter. We have 2 I's, 2 R's, and an E. Okay? That might help you remember these 5 reasons why people communicate. Now let's take a look at this. Let's pretend I took notes on something I heard for the IELTS listening, and let's see if we can guess the why here. So in my notes, the topic was phobia. The big picture, the person said they're going to talk about the types, the causes, the treatments of phobias. It looks here like they gave a definition. Right? When I take notes, I like to underline the words they define. That's just a trick that I do. And then they move on to types of phobia, and I see 2 types that they've talked about. Let's look again here. What's the why of this? Why do you think that person was talking? To me, it looks like they were giving information. It was probably from a lecture. And as I look at this information here, I see that the lecturer gave a big picture. The lecturer gave an overview of the information and said there are 3 main things, the 3 main ideas that person will talk about. Types, causes, treatments of phobia. So far in my notes, we've covered the first one. So I'm going to expect that the lecturer will cover 2 more main ideas, both the causes of phobias and the treatments of phobias. All right, in English, we have a saying that someone can't see the forest for the trees. Have you ever heard that before? What does it mean? Well, if I tell someone that, well, that person just can't see the forest for the trees, what I'm saying is they are so focused on the details that they don't see the big picture. Now, as you're taking the IELTS listening, I hope that you learn how to see the forest for the trees. You can focus on the details, but because you're focusing on the details, it doesn't mean you're missing the big picture. Always focus on the big picture first. That's what I have for you today. Good luck as you study this week.